think probably one of the most central things in my practice, going back a very, very long time, is collecting language, collecting bits of language. Ever since I was a teenager, I've kept a notebook where I just wrote down sentences or half sentences or bits of things that interested me. You know, it might be something that somebody said, or it might be something that you read in the newspaper or online or heard in a film or heard on the bus. Turns of phrase or details of language that seem resonant or kind of interesting to me. And then I think in my work I often go to that notebook and I kind of dig through it, and I'm looking for fragments or phrases that have a particular sort of quality. They might, you know, have maybe an ambiguity, maybe they propose a really strong image, maybe they seem to be asking a question, maybe they have a sort of weird contradiction. They seem to be saying one thing but also at the same time saying the opposite. In 2008 I made the first neon piece that I made, which said, "Wait here, I've gone to get help." It was for Art Sheffield. I like these little phrases that when you put them in public space, they float an idea but they don't tell you something. What they do more is open up a space for people to think. So in a way what they tell you is not so important as what they don't tell you. I like that idea that as a reader or a viewer, when you come across these works, you have to puzzle about what they are. I also like that thing that, you know, public space is often so dominated by advertising that everything that you see or read is trying to sell you something. So I like graffiti, and also like being able to work in public space with artworks. Then what's written in the work, what's proposed in the work, enters into a sort of dialogue with the place, and it, you know, enters into a dialogue with, of course, with everything that any person is carrying with them as baggage, or as what they're thinking about that day, what kind of mood they're in. The text sort of acts as a bit of a reactive element on that, and triggers different things in different people. So this piece for Gateshead, for the Great Exhibition, it uses two phrases which mean very different things, but both sort of refer to the movement of water. So go with the flow, and swim against the tide. And, you know, I came up here to look at the sites and to think about what might be possible and what would be interesting to do in this location. And I kind of walked up and down and around town and along the river, and obviously was thinking a lot about the river, and reading about Gateshead, about Newcastle. And, you know, I was thinking about the river as a sign for the city, as a source of its economy at a certain point, and as a living thing inside a city. And I was also thinking about the north and about the spirit of the north in terms of its the particular sort of energy that the northern cities have, in terms of humour and in terms of how life is lived. So this idea of putting these two completely contradictory pieces of advice, go with the flow, you know, just chill out, take it easy, no problem, and then swim against the tide, you know, rebel, push, try to change things. The idea of putting those two things next to each other, I think it does an interesting thing to you as a viewer, because you're sort of told one thing and immediately told the opposite. And I like that slight panic that it engenders. You know, it throws up this weird so it's got a very forceful, imperative sort of direction, but actually it contradicts itself immediately. And I like that, and maybe that's an interesting way to think about what a city is, and about, you know, what a way of being in the world is, to have these two completely contradictory impulses. So I'm always thinking about not just what to say, but how, what should the form be, what would be the most apt tension to introduce in a particular place. I've done a lot of neon pieces, and I've done a relatively small number of these larger scale LED and steel pieces. I like these because they have a sort of slightly carnivalesque vibe. They announce themselves as like the Dodgems or something, and they twinkle, and they've got this sort of slightly more performative allure. It's actually the biggest piece, if we talk about scale, it's the biggest piece that I've made for such a context, with Baltic in Gateshead for the Great Exhibition of the North. It's really, really exciting to be able to present such a thing here, and a piece that's made for this location, that really, I think, speaks across the riverbank to the city. You can see it from both sides of the river. I think it's great to present something that really belongs here in that way.